Hi guys, today we're going to be writing expressions. By the end of the lesson, you'll be able to translate between verbal and algebraic expressions. Verbal expressions are the expressions that we speak or the words. Algebraic expressions are the expressions that we write with our numbers and variables. So we're going to be going from words to paper and from paper to words. We'll begin with our vocabulary. A variable is a symbol used to represent unknown numbers or values. The symbols that we're going to use in Algebra 1 class are going to be our ABCs. So any letter in the alphabet could be used as a variable. Our terms are a number, a variable, or a product or quotient of numbers and variables. So let's break this down. A term can really be one of four things. First, it could be a number. Let's say the number 2. That's a term. It could be a variable. Say the variable x. That's a term. Or it could be a product of numbers and variables, where a product is multiplication. It's a fancy word for multiplication. So that would be like multiplying together 2 and x to get 2x. A quotient of numbers and variables, so our quotient, is a fancy word for division. And that would be taking something like 2 divided by x. These are all examples of terms. An algebraic expression has one or more terms and one or more operation. So it could be like one of the terms we had above, 2x, that's one term. Or it could be more than one term. Let's say we have a 2x, and then above I believe we used a 2. Well, if I have more than one term, I have to separate them by some sort of an operation. So that's anything that's in our PEMDAS. So I'm going to separate these with an addition sign. So you can have one term or one or more terms with an operation. Let's talk about factors. So factors are quantities that are multiplied in an algebraic expression. So we could say we have the algebraic expression 2 times x. Well, my factors in this expression, one factor is 2, the other factor is x. Or I could have the algebraic expression 2 times 3, where 2 is one of my factors and 3 is one of my factors. These are both examples, or all four of these are examples of factors. Now let's talk about a product. So when we actually multiply together those factors, you're going to get the product. So it's the results of the quantities being multiplied. So if I were to take this 2 times x, its product is 2x. If I were to take this 2 times 3, its product is 6. Both of those are examples of products. And then finally, we have our powers, which are in the form of x to the n power, where we read this x to the nth power. So let's go ahead. We know variables are placeholders for numbers that we don't know. So let's pretend. Let's pretend like x equals 2. Let's pretend like n equals 7. A base in the form of x to the n is going to be that x value, or the big number. So in our example, 2 is our base. The exponent is going to be in the form of x to the n. It's going to be the n. So that's our little number. And we see that's 7 in our example. We're going to use these words to help us through the next 4 examples. For example 1 and 2, write a verbal expression for each algebraic expression. And remember, verbal means those words, while algebraic are our numbers and our variables. Okay, so what this is asking us to do is to go from the algebra to the words. So what I like to do first is identify any operations. And I know that when there's a number in front of a variable, that means it's multiplication. So what I like to do next is to decide how I would read this aloud to a friend. Well, I know multiplication is product, or the product of, so I would say it's the product of 3 and q to the 4th power. So now I'm just going to write down exactly what I said aloud. The product of 3 and Q. Now I have to be sure to write out the words to the, E at the end, the fourth power. And I've done what the instructions asked me to do. I took my variables and went into words. Let's look at one more. The instructions stay the same. So again, we're going to start with identifying our operations. I see multiplication happening here, number next to a variable, and addition. Think about it. How would I say this aloud to a friend? I would say the product of 5 and z to the 7th plus 16. Yeah. So I'm going to go ahead and write that down. The product of 5 and z to the 7th power, I think I forgot to say power earlier, plus 16. Boom. Let's move on to example 3. So we've done algebraic to verbal. Our next set of expressions are asking us to start with the words, or the verbal, and they want us to write it with our numbers and variables. And it's going to be very similar to how we did the last two problems. So first, we're going to read it aloud. We have to work a little backwards here. So we have 10 less than the product of 7 and f. Well, now that I've read it, I'm going to try to identify any mathematical relevant language in here. So, for example, I see the term less than, and I know that's important, and I see the product of, which we just talked about in the last example. All right. So now I'm going to do some annotation. So what do these words that I circled even mean? And do I recognize anything else? And I do. I see that I have a number 10 here. This less than, well, I know that that's subtraction, but I also know that this is special. Whenever there's the word than, okay, less than or more than, that is a turnaround word. And that tells us to start with whatever we began with verbally and make that at the end in our algebraic expression. And I'll show you what that means here in a moment. I also know that the product of means multiplication, and that's important. And I have the product of 7 and f. So that's what I'll be multiplying together. What I'm going to do next is go ahead and write down what I have. Starting with that turnaround word, I'll have my minus sign, my operation, but I know that 10 is now at the end. The turnaround word tells me that'll go to the end. My 7 and f is multiplication, so I'll take 7 times f to get 7f. Needs to go at the beginning. And this would be my algebraic expression from my verbal expression. Example 4. I'm going to start with reading it, just like the last one. Mr. Frazier distributes 175 gold membership ID cards and 40 platinum membership ID cards to the freshman class. Write an algebraic expression to represent this situation. So now that I've done that, I'm going to circle any math relevant language. So I see this 175 is important, and I see this 40 is important. Okay. Oh, and then and. That could be an important word as well. Now I'm going to go back and do my annotations. Well, I know this is 175, but what is that 175 of? It's our gold membership ID cards. Okay, and I know that I need just something to represent the gold membership ID cards, and so I'm going to choose a variable, and I choose one variable, not two, but one. And I'll use G because that's what gold membership starts with. This 40 also needs its label, so that's the platinum membership ID, and I'm going to use P for platinum for my variable. I also had this word and circled. Oops, I skipped over that. I know and is typically addition whenever we're going from verbal to algebraic. So down below, you're going to see I have some equal signs set up. And that's because we want to always be sure that we define our variables. And one of our variables was G, and we said that was the gold membership ID. This is so we don't get confused later on if we need to refer back to them. And then our second variable was P, which we said was going to be for the platinum membership ID card. And these little quotes just mean to repeat what's right above. So when I'm going to write this out, I'm going to start with 175 gold membership cards. So I'll have that 175, but I still need my label. So that's the G. And I'm just writing it exactly how I see it above. And then the next thing I had was my plus sign. And I keep going. Right after my plus is my 40. And then I'm using a P to represent platinum. So Oh, what I forgot to do was to underline my question, which was to write an algebraic expression that represents the situation. Well, I think we've done that. This says we have 175 golds plus 40 platinums. Wonderful. This is my final answer. I have one more question for you to try, and just do the best you can. Bring your answer to class tomorrow. Have a great day.